What is up, YouTube? It's Dear coming to you with another video, and in this video I'm going to talk about some interesting things, so I hope this is a great video. But before I start it off, I want to start with a quote from a book I read called The Power of Now by Enoch Tolle. You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. This is how important you are. So, in this video, I want to talk about how the government used biological warfare, AIDS, drugs, guns and violence, music to program African Americans. How they turned us against each other by planting these things in our neighborhood so we could kill ourselves, stay at our lowest, and stay at a lower state of mind, so we could not reach our full potential. In this video, I will also talk about how the prison system was established, and the main reason why it was established was to keep blacks enslaved after slavery ended, and how they used prison and drugs to take black men off the streets during the 1970s. Then why the prison rate or the prison incarceration rate increased by 1980. I will also talk about abortion and how it was used to control the black population, and it was originally meant for blacks, Mexicans, and not white women. And I will also talk about how abortion played a major role in the civil rights movement. I'm also going to touch on Nazi Germany and how Hitler got his ideas of torture from American authors and their plans to get rid of African Americans after slavery ended. Because the number of blacks were too much, and they realized that eventually the white race would die out and would be overpopulated by blacks. And the last thing I will touch on is how they use music to program our minds to sex, drugs, violence, and money, and also how it disrespects our black women by calling them curse words. Notice I said curse words because our words are powerful and they have meaning behind them. These words also carry negative energy behind them and are usually directed to black women to make them feel down and keep them at low mind states, when black women are the most powerful thing walking on the planet. So the information I'm going to use for this next part, I got it out this book called Beyond the Pale Horse. It has a lot of information in here. It has a few topics this book covers. It covers silent weapons for quiet wars. It covers the FEMA. It covers Federal Emergency Management Agency, Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988, the secret government, treason in high places, new states of America, the documentation on Army U.S. intelligence. It talks about UFOs, Area 51, AIDS, that's what I'm going to go to, and the U.S. government involvement in drugs. So this has a lot of information y'all can read. It has certified U.S. documents, and you know how the CIA or whoever released a whole bunch of documents. So this book has classified U.S. documents and everything in there. So yeah, I'm going to start with how AIDS were created and why it was created. Okay, so this information came from the Department of Defense of Operation for 1970 Committee of Operations, House of Representatives, the 91st Congress, First Section, Part 5, Research and Development and Test Evaluation. So molecular biology is a field that is advancing very rapidly, and biologists believe that within a period of 5 to 10 years, it will be possible to produce a synthetic biological agent, an agent that does not naturally exist. I'm going to say that again, an agent that does not naturally exist, and for which no natural immunity would have been acquired. So this means they can create a man-made disease that are not known to our immune system, meaning our body won't be able to heal the infection and fight it on its own, and there will be no natural way to remove the disease. Their plan was to make a new infected microorganism which could differ in certain important aspects from any known disease-causing organisms. And most important of these is that it might be refractory to the immunological and therapeutic processes which we depend on to maintain our relative freedom from infectious disease. It is a highly controversial issue, and there are many to believe who such research should be not undertaken, lest it led to another method of a massive killing of large populations. In 1969, the U.S. Defense Department requested $10 million to make AIDS virus in their lab as a political and ethnic weapon to use mainly against blacks. This was 3 years before the World Health Organization also requested money to help develop AIDS. This research and programs had to be completed by 1974 or 1975, and the virus was between 1974 through 1979. The World Health Organization started to inject AIDS-laced smallpox vaccines in over 100 million African Americans in 1977 to decrease their population. So when people went to get their smallpox vaccines, some of them was laced with AIDS. That's how the AIDS virus started. AIDS is a man-made virus. It's not natural. So that's when I said that they wanted to create a synthetic biological agent that does not naturally exist, and there'd be no way to cure it naturally. So they started to inject people with AIDS, and they injected over 100 million African Americans in 1977 to decrease their population. And then in 1978, they injected AIDS-laced hepatitis B vaccine in over 2,000 white males, homosexuals, as a Trojan horse. So notice how they injected over 100 million African Americans with AIDS through the smallpox vaccine, and then they only injected 2,000 white males, well, homosexual males, with the hepatitis B vaccine. That's a huge number. That's like huge. So, and they also put the virus in drugs. Y'all remember the crack epidemic, but I'm going to touch and go into more detail about the crack epidemic later. It was said that by the HIV virus that caused AIDS would probably infect over 100 million children by the year 2000. Already 400,000 cases, or 1/3 of the 1.2 million estimated cases of AIDS worldwide to date, are believed to be occurred in children under the age of 5. This was reported September 26, 1990 by the LA Times in an article called AIDS Taking Heavily Toll on Children. And y'all know kids weren't doing anything to get this virus, so if they were infected, if they already started infecting people with the vaccines, who are the main people to get vaccines when they're first born? So they also tested it and targeted on newborns' baby through the vaccines. Now let's talk about how they planted drugs in our neighborhood and how they used drugs to kill our population and to send black people to jail to get them off the streets. I got this information from a book, titled, there's an article in the book titled Panama Resists U.S. Pressure on Bank Laws. It states that the U.S. government and CIA have been involved directly in the cocaine drug trade from Central America. They used shrimp fishing boats with cocaine frozen and with the shrimps. And they also was flying cocaine through the Air Force military planes. And since the government was involved, the boats were not intercepted by the U.S. Coast Guards. Panama was one of the best tax havens jurisdictions in the world prior to December 20th, 1989, so they can move money without it being traced. After they smuggled the drugs into the U.S., these drugs was then planted into black neighborhoods. This was an effort to stop them from attaining stability, building wealth, and achieving political power. By the late 1970s, more people were on this drug than ever before. Then in the early 80s, smokable crack exploded across America. This began a gold mine for organized crime. After the rise of crack, the police then targeted the African American community. This caused a large number of black, poor people to go to jail or prison. The poverty rate grew faster than ever at this time. Harlem was affected the most during this crack era. People were selling and using on the streets during the day and night. But do you know why Harlem was targeted? Think back to the Harlem Renaissance, where black people flourished, creating their own art, music, dance, fashion, literature, and theater, and politics, and cultural revival of the African Americans, giving them hope and freedom, and most of all, power to create a great future for themselves. This movement changed America, not only the African Americans, because it gave them a new spirit of self-determination, pride, new social consciousness, and a new commitment to political activism. The Harlem Renaissance was the first of many steps of black people regaining their power. This also turned into the civil rights movement. So this is why Harlem was hit the hardest by the crack era, because we noticed that their goal was to stop them from attaining stability, building wealth, and achieving political power. So they hit Harlem the hardest because that's where we started the Harlem Renaissance. And the media was talking about how bad it was and how the police allowed it to happen because they saw the effects it had on the black community. The police even took money from dealers and also the drugs too to resell it and make a bigger profit. They also created nests of black people. They used crack planted in our communities to call us names like crackhead. They would do anything for crack. Crack mama, which means a black woman who sold her baby for crack, then a falsehood of crack baby. The media played a huge part in making it seem like crack started from black people and they were the main cause of it, and it caused the biggest problem in America, and how they shouldn't receive treatment, but they should be sent to prison. So the government created laws that would send a person to jail for a long amount of time. In 1986, the average federal drug sentence for African Americans was 11% higher than whites. 4 years later, it was 49% higher than whites. Not only were men affected, but African American women incarcerated rate at all times for all crimes, mostly drug convictions, increased by 800%. In 1986, compared to the increase of 400% of women from all races. They also created lies that crack caused a rise in violence. In 1988, New York City had 414 homicides that year. Only 3 of the cases involved crack. 64.8 overall cases that involved crack didn't involve weapons. 74.5% of crack offenders had no personal weapons. Only 2.3 crack offenders used weapons. So only 2.3% of crack offenders used weapons. Blacks served as much time in prison for a drug offense at 58.7 months as do whites for a violent offense at 61.7 months. So a black man can go to jail for having drugs for the same amount as a white man that created or caused a violent act. So they created lies and falsehoods that African Americans became violent once they used crack, and crack was the main reason. And the reason for violence increased over that time was due to black people and their crack activities. But it's a myth that crack is instantly addictive, saying that crack was much more addictive than that of powder cocaine. That is instantly addictive. Crack powder and crack cocaine are the same thing. It's the same drug. Crack is formed by dissolving powder cocaine and treating it with alkali, such as baking soda. JAMA published in an article in 1996 saying that the psychological and psychoactive effect of cocaine are similar regardless whether it's in the form of powder or crack. The study also talked about how people were incarcerated for the sale or possession of cocaine, whether of powder or crack, are better served by drug treatment than imprisonment. They also have the same effects on the brain. The only difference is how they are ingested in the body. The faster cocaine reaches the bloodstream, the quicker the effects on the drug if it is felt on the user. Smoking crack or injecting powder cocaine brings the most effective intense effects of cocaine. Regardless of a person smokes crack or uses powder cocaine, each form of the drug can be addictive because they share the same chemical properties. The only difference is by the form you choose to do it. Also, Dr. Chastoff stated that in studies found a child's home environment is the single most influential factor in determining whether a child be healthy. An infant exposed to crack or powder cocaine would be hard to tell from other babies. Dr. Frank added small but identifiable effects of prenatal exposure to crack, cocaine, or powder are uncertain to newborns' development. But they are also very similar to the effects associated with prenatal tobacco use exposure, such as low birth weight, height, head circumference. He also included that, based off years of careful research, the term crack baby was just a media stereotype and not based off science. This is how they used drugs during the 1700s through 1990s to target the black community. In the next video, I will touch on how they use abortion as modern-day genocides towards blacks and the origin of abortion and why It was really created. It has nothing to do with women's rights, but instead population control / ethnic control towards black. I will also talk about how Hitler got his ideas how to torture people from American authors on books they wrote on how to handle the black population after slavery ended. And I will also talk about how to use music to program our thinking and how the words can affect our minds and how they target black women with music to keep them at a low point by calling them names and how they sexualize women in music as well. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. I know I covered a lot of good information about this. It's shocking to hear how we are targeted by our skin color and how the government wants to keep us down. But it's time to stop the violence towards each other because we are not the enemy. Just like we were programmed to think and believe things, white people were also programmed to think and believe things. I know we can't change our past, but we can all come together and help each other heal and overcome challenges. Because we have been programmed to believe races are real. We have been programmed to believe that racism and race wars are real. And we all come from the same creator and we all are connected. We are not our enemy, but the enemy is the one who programmed us. If we want to make a difference in the world, we have to put aside our pride, come together and rise up as one because we are more powerful together in numbers. Then that's when the real change and peace will come. When we start to love and look out for each other. The government can control us if we are all together in one group. They can only control us when we are separate, living in disharmony. We have to restore the natural harmony within ourselves and within the world. Because at one point there was no race, there was no color, just peace, love, and harmony. We all live together and it's time to restore balance to the world. It'll be a painful process to hear all the lies that we were told, but we can overcome anything with love and we can all come together to heal. We can all also come together to create our heaven on earth. Peace, love, and light. Thanks for watching, guys. I know this video was kind of choppy and everything, but I tried my hardest to get this information out. Hopefully y'all understand it and realize that there's a lot of stuff our government is doing that we don't know about. We think we're the problem when we're not the problem. The government's the problem. So hopefully this touches people and y'all understand it. I'm sorry if it was kind of all over the place, but